Well, the election probably won't be determined that day anyway, so it's really a moving. Oh, really? It's a good. I think it's a smart bet because, like, if you're wrong, we're in a constitutional crisis and nobody remembers, and you're right, it was like, wow, you were right. Yeah, I mean, it seems reasonable to go forward. Do we have a game plan if you can't join us? I don't think we can decide that right now, but you're good? You've got your tripod ready, Megan? Just keep us on. No, they can't. Are you? Yeah. So we're going from our questions to you, Megan. What were you planning to ask her about? Yeah. So I would propose it sounds like we're not going to have run at all. We're looking forward to the next section. And that's just directly in Q&A. Or enough of action you can take in a Q&A. So that's what we'll plan. Megan, in that case, do you want to take the recap of what you can do? If she's going to be there? Hey, if she's there, you'll do your thing as normal. If not, then I think I'll take the recap of what you can do. Cool.
Hey everybody, I'm Megan Hatcher-Mays. I'm the Director of Democracy Policy here at Indivisible. We are going to get started with our Windivisible kickoff. Thank you for joining us tonight, whether you're watching on Facebook, YouTube, or Twitter. Thank you for joining us. It's going to be a big, big night. It's going to be a big 100 days. But before I talk to you some more, we're going to watch a video from a very special guest.
Hey everyone, I want to thank everybody involved with Indivisible, especially Leah and Ezra, for reasserting an essential truth of our democracy, that here in America, people motivated for change can always make a difference. Over the last 4 years, you've proven just how powerful we can be when we turn our grief, our anger, our fear into purpose and healing. You've motivated tens of thousands of Americans to believe in their own capacity to change the world. And then you've proved them right. You've come together to hold this president accountable, to protect Obamacare, to help win back the House of Representatives, to carry forward the legacy of an American giant, John Lewis, by standing up for democracy when we need it most. Over the next 100 days, we're going to face the toughest task yet. But I have full faith that together, we're going to make Donald Trump a one-term president. And when we do, that's when the work truly begins. I'm counting on you to join me in the fight for economic justice, racial justice, environmental justice, immigration justice, and for a sweeping expansion of democratic rights that finally elevate the people of D.C. to equal place in our democracy. I want to thank you all for finding your purpose. Thank you for joining the fight. We have 100 days to go. So let's change the world, because I'm telling you, we can do it.
Yay! Thank you, Vice President Joseph Robinette Biden Jr. for that very inspiring message. Especially appreciated the shout out for DC statehood in his message. This is very exciting. Thanks again for joining us for the Windivisible kickoff event with us tonight. Thank you for watching YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, wherever you're watching. We appreciate it very, very much. So tonight we're going to be talking about nothing more than just the most consequential election of our lifetimes. We crossed the 100-day Rubicon just like in the last day or so. And so that means we have 100 days to finally turn things around. It's been a long 3.5 years or so. Everybody watching this live stream has worked their absolute buns off to hold Republicans accountable, to take back the House, to do all this incredible stuff under the Trump presidency. But now it's really crunch time. This is an all hands on deck moment to win in November, or if you will, Windivisible in November. So thank you for tuning in. We've got a really exciting run of show for you tonight. We're going to hear from our fearless leaders, Leah and Ezra. They're going to be talking to our IE political director, Lucy Solomon, who's going to give you some great tips about how you can get involved with Windivisible, where you can go, where you can sign up, and what you can sign up to do in this final stretch before November 2020. And we're going to be hearing from a group leader from Florida. Already Florida is crushing it with the Windivisible numbers, so we're very excited to talk to her. Jyoti Parmar from North Central Florida, Indivisible. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Leah, who has some very exciting updates on Windivisible. Leah, take it away.
Thank you, Megan. And it is great to be here with all of you all tonight. It has been a long road to get to today. For the last 4 years, Indivisibles have taken action to defeat the Trump agenda. We marched, we showed up at airports, we showed up at town halls and held die-ins to beat back Trump care. We visited district offices so often that some representatives went into hiding rather than face us. Indivisible activism helped define the 2018 election, and your work, canvassing, phone banking, texting, letter writing, helped build the blue wave of 2018. But we haven't stopped there. In 2019, we turned out for bold democracy reform, to defund hate, to demand impeachment. In 2020, we have been fighting for COVID relief, working to support our communities in the middle of a pandemic, and fighting to defend Black lives and demand justice. We've stood with communities under threat. We've rallied to defend progressive policies. We've fought to replace our elected officials when they don't listen to us. Now we are 100 days out from an election that is going to decide the future of this country, and we are ready. And now it's over to Ezra.
Hey, everybody. Can you hear me okay? I hope so. So, hey, I'm Ezra Levin. I'm one of the co-founders of Indivisible. Look, hard acts to follow after the vice president, Leah Greenberg. What am I going to say? And Megan Hatcher-Mays, this is tough. They put me on to talk about something easy, which is what's at stake right now. And look, if you are watching this webinar right now, and I hope you are on YouTube, Twitter, or Facebook, because that's where we're streaming, or live at 2020.indivisible.org, you know what's at stake, which is our democracy cannot survive another 4 years of Donald Trump or Mitch McConnell controlling policy in this country. Now, that's a big topic. That's what we're going to be getting into. And so I bet you've got questions about it. And so again, if you are streaming on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, anywhere, please let us know what your questions are. We're going to be talking at you some, but I think the real value of things like this are that you can ask us questions and we can get to them. So any questions under the sun, please post them. We're monitoring and we'll try to get to them at the end. But just a couple notes on what's at stake. I meant that first part about our democracy literally, and I think you understand it literally too. Trump has spent the last 4 years nearly systematically undermining our democracy. And as he stands there, as he digs a deeper and deeper ditch for this country, who is standing right behind him, whistling while he works? None other than Mitch McConnell and the rest of the GOP in the Senate. Trump victory would mean he doubles down on all of the things that he's done over the course of the last 3.5 years. He'd ramp up attacks on immigrants. He would ramp up attacks on communities of color, on the rule of law itself. But we know that defeating Trump alone is not enough. We know that McConnell and the Senate GOP, a victory for them is almost as dangerous for our democracy. McConnell himself, in his own words, has pledged to be the Grim Reaper of all progressive legislation. Again, he calls himself the Grim Reaper. And so if we have a president, Joe Biden, as we're working to create this year in 2021, up against a Senate Majority Leader, Mitch McConnell, we're not getting progressive legislation or judges. Heck, we might not even get a secretary for the Department of Treasury or Health and Human Services. He will do what he did to Barack Obama, which is try to thwart him at every single turn. So yes, we got to win. We got to win in the presidency. We got to win in the Senate. We got to win the House. But winning is not enough. We all know this, right? We can't just eke out 50% plus one vote. We can't just eke out 270 electoral votes in the Electoral College, because you know, and I know, that Trump and the GOP are doing everything they can to undermine the results. He is giving interviews saying that he might not accept the results of this election. So yes, we built a wave in 2018, the largest midterm margins in the history of the Republic, which we should be proud of. It was incredible. But a wave isn't enough this year. We need a tsunami this year. That's what we're building right now. That's what Windivisible is about. We need a Biden landslide. We have to make it impossible for Trump and his allies to steal this. So we don't need to just defeat Trump. We need to send Mitch McConnell packing. And we don't just need to send Mitch McConnell packing. We need to grow our House majority. And we don't even just need a blue trifecta headed into 2021. What we need is a mandate for the legislative reforms that are going to cast all of these proto-fascists, Trump, McConnell, and the rest of them into the history books as cautionary tales, things that future generations of would-be fascists look at and say, oh, I don't want to be those guys. That's what we're aiming to do. So what's at stake? Do we defeat Donald Trump this year? Do we defeat Mitch McConnell this year? Do we build the landslide necessary to guarantee that they cannot steal this election? And finally, does this election deliver the kind of mandate necessary, the kind of mandate we need for the legislative reforms to save our democracy from the next potential would-be American dictator? That's what we're doing through Windivisible. And now I'm pleased to turn it over to Megan, who's going to shed a little light on the successes we've already been seeing at the local level.
Yes, thank you, Ezra. We have already seen a ton, in fact. Everyone's been really jazzed to vote Donald Trump out of office since November 2016. I count myself among those people who have been excited to do so, but we're super excited about this. By the way, if you are interested in getting involved, you can go to 2020.indivisible.org and already get a preview of what you can do to make Windivisible happen. But super exciting. We just launched this today, and already 70,000 texts to voters have been sent in Florida. That might be a record for a number of texts sent in a single day. So that's super, super exciting. There's a lot happening that everybody can do starting now. You can send texts to people. We can't really knock on doors so much anymore because of coronavirus, but it's all very exciting. That's what Windivisible is all about. These last 100 days, nothing short of the fate of our republic hangs in the balance. So sending some text messages, we can all do something kind of like that. So with even more information about what you can do, Ezra and Leah are going to talk to Lucy Solomon, my colleague, the IE political director at Indivisible.
To introduce yourself for us.
Be here tonight and to have a chance to talk to all of you. My name is Lucy Solomon. As Megan mentioned, I am our IE political director. So what that means in practice is that I work with everybody on the Indivisible team to figure out what our plans for winning in 2020 are. So retaking the Senate, keeping the House and expanding our margins there, and winning the White House. And really excited to have the opportunity to talk to you all tonight about Windivisible.
Okay, go ahead, Leah. You kick off. Go ahead.
Well, Lucy, tell us, just to start off, what is the Windivisible program?
Windivisible is our plan to do exactly that, to win in the House, to win in the Senate, and to retake the White House. And we've got a plan to talk to voters across the country in 18 key states. Those are places that we know will be most important for 2020. So most important for the White House and most important for winning the Senate. And we'll be talking to voters in all of those states, in addition to the work that local Indivisible groups are doing across the country. So we'll have folks and be supporting folks in sending text messages, in making phone calls, and in writing letters to voters in those 18 key states that we know will make all the difference in November.
And can you tell us, how can Indivisibles who are watching now and who want to get involved, how exactly can they get involved right now?
You can start talking to voters right away. If you go to 2020.indivisible.org, you can sign up to do text banking, to do phone banking, or to start sending letters immediately. So there are lots of different ways you can get involved. We'll have a week of action starting this week, actually, and we'll be having weeks of action all the way up until Election Day. So there are plenty of opportunities to get involved safely from home while protecting yourselves and your neighbors. It's still possible to talk to voters and talk to them about why this election matters so much.
Great. And Lucy, so one question that I get a lot when I'm talking to Indivisible groups is so you talked about there's phone banking people can do, there's text banking people can do. We're running letters to the voters and trying to reach out to tens of millions of new voters. But what's the most effective thing? If for the people watching this right now, they're sitting at home, they're saying, I want to beat Trump, I want to beat McConnell, I want to expand the House. What's the most effective thing they can do right now?
So I think a lot of it depends on what you're most excited about doing. Everything that we put out there is tested. So we're asking you to send text messages or make phone calls or send letters because all of those things are tactics that have been tried and tested by experts over the last, couple decades. Of course, no one has ever run a national presidential election in the middle of a global pandemic before. So, I think what we said in 2018 was the most effective thing you can do is go knock on doors. I think this cycle, what we're saying is the most effective thing you can do is pick up the phone and make phone calls to voters, pick up your cell phone, send text messages to voters, or write letters to voters in those key states. We'll make sure that we are doing targeting. We're talking to other partners on the independent expenditure side to make sure that we're setting up lists so we can have the greatest impact across the movement in talking to voters and getting them to turn out.
What you're saying is if you like to write, you can write letters. If you like to text, you can text. If you like to talk to people, you can call. But there is a way to participate in building this tsunami. And you can do it from the comfort of your own home with your friends across your Zooms or in your own communities, which is great. I just want to note, we right now are asking Lucy a lot of questions. And you probably are saying, oh, I really wish they would ask this other thing. And why aren't they asking that? Do I have good news for you? If you are watching on Twitter, Facebook, or YouTube, and you have that in your head right now, put the question in there. We are monitoring at the end of our set of questions that we've got up. we are going to turn to questions from the audience and try to get through as many as we can. So please do put them there. We'll monitor. With that, I'll turn it over to Leah for another question for Lucy.
Great. Well, Lucy, one question that comes up a lot from folks is if they don't know how to text bank or to phone bank, is there a way to get trained up?
Absolutely. We've got an incredible training team here at Indivisible that is ready to support you in text banking and phone banking. I think for a lot of us, we are doing things for the first time, whether it's because we realize that it's so vital to take action right now, or because we had different plans for how we were going to get involved. Maybe you're someone who's canvassed every election cycle for decades, and this is your first time thinking, okay, how else can I get involved? If I can't go out and knock doors, what else can I do? And so, definitely, I know there can be a learning curve, or it can be intimidating to try a tactic you haven't tried before, but we'll have a really strong texting training program and phone banking training program. So if you've never done it before, don't worry. We've got folks who will make sure it is a really good, strong volunteer experience, and that you can have that impact that you might have had at the doors, or now you can have it at home on the phones or texts.
Right. Another question, Lucy. So we have about 250 events all across the country just this week for this week of action. So if I'm somebody who's watching this right now and I'm saying, wow, 250 events, what does that mean? What does an event for the week of action mean? What is that? What are the folks doing who are participating in these events?
So as I mentioned before, we're going to have a number of weeks of action between now and Election Day. And what weeks of action are is really a way to show our power as a movement. So there are Indivisible groups across the country who are going to be hosting virtual phone banks, virtual text banks. We know that this work is incredibly important. It can be really fun, and it can also feel a little hard or lonely if you're at home. So a virtual event is a great way where you'll be in community with other people who are doing phone banking, doing text banking, or doing letter writing even. And so you can all come together and have these virtual events, be in community with each other, even when, we're all distanced at home.
That's great. And on that note, Lucy, you've talked a little bit about how COVID has changed the way that we're doing voter outreach this cycle. Could you talk a little bit more about exactly how we've designed this program in order to make sure that we're taking into account the needs around COVID?
Yeah, absolutely. I joined Indivisible back in 2017, and so I was able to see the incredible work that so many Indivisibles did in 2018, knocking doors, but also making phone calls and sending text messages. So as we headed into this cycle, we were all thinking there was going to be a ton of canvassing going on. Obviously, we're not doing that at this moment. We're not planning to ask anybody to canvass. But the good news for us is we weren't starting from scratch. We had a program that we ran in 2018 that I'm sure many of you, if you signed up to make phone calls or send text messages in 2018, you got to have an experience of that virtual distributed voter contact. So when we realized the situation we were in, we took a look at our program. We decided to double the number of contacts we'd be attempting on phones and on text messages, and invest in making sure that voters would be able to reach out to other voters and talk to them about the importance of this election. And another key component is we're not just doing GOTV, get out the vote, in the last couple of weeks. We're starting to talk to voters now. As Megan mentioned, we sent 70,000, I think, text messages in Florida today alone. And that's really important because there's also a key component of voter education that is really all the more important in this COVID time period, where you have election laws that are changing across the country. You have folks who may be looking to vote by mail for the first time or get on an absentee list for the first time. And so we want to make sure that we're reaching out to voters to let them know how they can do that safely if that's what they want to do, or if they want to vote in person, if there are precincts changing, polling locations changing. And so how they can vote safely in person or register to get an absentee ballot and vote by mail. So we're starting that work now, and then we'll be doing both that voter education component and then get out the vote all the way through Election Day.
Great. So we talked about voter education. We talked about getting out the vote. When I was talking earlier, I was talking about Trump promising to consider whether or not he would accept the results of the election. We've seen McConnell actively block election security measures on the Senate floor. We've seen them fight against vote by mail, fight to defund the United States Postal Service. What are we doing to protect the vote?
Yeah, so in addition to all the work that we're doing in the lead up, and that includes promoting voter protection resources that some of our partners are doing, which will be a key component of our Get Out the Vote messaging. We also know that likely this cycle, the election doesn't end on election day. So obviously we are all hoping for the best in terms of Trump gracefully admitting defeat and leaving office, but we're also preparing for the worst. So we're part of a partnership called Protect the Vote, which is focused on making sure that we're protecting the election results when we win in November, that we're able to turn around and make sure that Trump isn't able to steal this election in the days afterwards.
That's great. Lucy, one question that comes up a lot is how actually are we choosing the targeting for all the electoral outreach that we're doing? How are we choosing the target states? And then how are we deciding which voters to reach out to get out the vote?
Yeah, so across the country, we'll be talking to voters statewide in 18 states. And we'll be talking to over 20 million, doing over 20 million contacts to voters in those states. And who exactly we're talking to is going to be based on what we think is most strategic. So when we're looking at the 2020 map, we know it is a really broad map. We have a really broad Senate battleground, and we have a really broad presidential battleground. So when we're thinking of who we want to talk to, we want to make sure that we are being as effective as possible. So we're prioritizing states where we can really have a nested impact, where you can see really key House races that we know we either have to hold on to or have to flip, where we've got key Senate races, and then where we've got presidential too. So when we're turning out voters in a House district who we know are going to vote for the Democratic House candidate, it'll have that uptick impact as well, where they'll vote for key Senate candidates and for Vice President Biden and whoever his vice president may be as well. In terms of which voters we're talking to, we're going to be focused on talking to progressive voters. And that includes progressive voters who vote every election, who we are fairly confident are going to vote, who we feel really good about voting, but who we might want to talk to about voting by mail or tell them about changes in election law in their state. So making sure that they have the information they need to actually go vote. And then we're talking to voters all the way down the propensity scale. So folks who generally don't turn out for elections, but who we know if they do turn out are more likely to vote for a Democrat. So we don't believe that any vote should be taken for granted. We're going to be talking to everybody, whether you vote every year or whether you haven't voted in a long time. We'll be doing outreach to voters to try and convince them to turn out this cycle and to be able to do it safely and effectively.
Great. Hey, one question we get from the Indivisible groups when we talk to them, Indivisible started not just in response to Trump's election, but also in response to trying to encourage Democratic members of the Senate and the House to fight back. Now, Indivisible's endorsed Joe Biden for president after the primary was over with 95% of the vote. We are committed to making Donald Trump a one-term president. But then given that Indivisible is not an arm of the Democratic Party and never has been, how, if at all, is Indivisible working directly with the campaigns?
Yeah, so my job is independent expenditure political director. So that means I'm not coordinating. We don't coordinate with the campaigns directly. And I think there are a couple of reasons for this, but a big one is what you just mentioned, Ezra, the fact that we are able to talk about the issues that really matter to us and push candidates to be good on those issues while we are getting out the vote for them. We will do the work to get them elected, and we'll say, this is why. We really care about structural democracy reform. We really care about DC statehood, or we really care about immigration. And that's why I'm volunteering. So I think that is a big part of our program, is that we're able to do this work to get Democrats and progressives elected up and down the ballot, but able to do it in a way that is independent from any party machinery. We know we are excited to get Joe Biden elected. We are excited to retake the Senate and expand our margins in the House. And we also know in January 2021, we're going to immediately start picking up those phones again and making phone calls to our representatives and saying, okay, we just did it. We got elected. But now here are the issues that matter to me. Let's get it done.
That's right. I think that is so core to what drives Indivisible. It's not one specific candidate, not even one specific issue. It's about building progressive power and achieving wins and changing the world. That's what we're trying to do here. One follow-up on that, though, and I get this question, too, from Indivisible groups when I talk. So if we're not coordinating directly with the campaign, I think everybody has had this experience where if you have ever given your phone number or your email address or your address to any political campaign, you just get bombarded with text after text or call after call or email after email. How, if at all, are we avoiding duplication with all of the other get out the vote efforts that are happening?
So I think it's sort of a split question. We can't avoid duplication with campaigns. We're not working directly with the campaigns. We're not going to know who they're talking to, and we legally can't do that. But what we can do is make sure that we're talking to all the other partners on the independent expenditure side. So we are in conversation with a variety of different partners, including a couple different tables where you have a bunch of progressive groups that come together and share information, share who we're talking to, so that we can make sure we're running the most effective program possible. So we're members of the Movement Cooperative and America Votes, both of which are really strong tables that bring together partners from around the progressive and democratic infrastructure, and make sure that we're sharing that information back and forth.
Got it. Go ahead, Leah.
So, and just to follow up on that, a big concern that we hear across the Indivisible movement is voter suppression, and generally the kind of concerns about what it's going to look like to have an election day in the middle of a pandemic. This combination of both all the technical problems that could come up because of the pandemic and the active campaign of voter suppression that the GOP is constantly conducting. What advice do you have for people who are concerned about how all these factors are going to impact our ability to have a free and safe election?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great question, and it is a really valid concern. We've seen some of the challenges that states have faced in trying to shift to vote by mail. It's one of the reasons that we're going to be doing this voter education component so that people know when they have to mail in their ballot by, better safe than sorry, mail it in early, that we'll be reaching out to people to give them that information about changes in just how to vote, literally. As far as election protection goes, we also partner with organizations that do really strong work. So we'll be sharing out that information in our GOTV messaging so that when folks, if they have any trouble in casting their ballot, they can contact the experts at the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights, is the partner that's been doing this work for a long time, and we'll be pointing people to their resources and their expertise as it comes down to actually getting time to cast a ballot.
So if you could, you said if there's a whole bunch of information here. Again, just remind us. So I am somebody who is maybe I'm in California, maybe I'm in Arizona, maybe I'm in a target state, maybe I'm not in a target state. What do I do right now? I want to beat Trump. I want to take the Senate. What am I doing right now? What do I do tomorrow? What do I do next week?
Well, right now, you can go to 2020.indivisible.org. It's right there on the screen, or you can text live stream to 97779. And that's how you can get plugged in with our program. So, as we were talking about before, if you want to send text messages, you can send text messages. If you want to make phone calls, you can do that. If you want to write letters, there is a way for everyone to get involved. From the comfort of your own home, to participate in community with other indivisibles across the country who are working to make sure that Trump is a one-term president. So again, 2020.indivisible.org will continue to provide resources to folks who want to take action. Whether you're in California or you're in Kentucky, you can take action this cycle and make sure that we get Trump out of office.
Okay, you heard it. You heard it, folks, from Lucy directly. We can do things. They can have impacts. They will result in Donald Trump being a one-term president and Mitch McConnell losing his job. That's the goal. So we have been asking Lucy a lot of questions. She has given us a lot of answers, and she hasn't given us all the answers because we didn't have all the questions. But we've been asking you, if you're watching YouTube, Twitter, or Facebook, to ask your questions, and we have been monitoring that. That's still an open invitation. So if you are looking around for answers to questions we have not yet asked, please ask them to us directly, and we will try to get to them. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Leah, who's going to go through one of the questions and tell us who's asking and what are they asking, Leah?
Great. Elizabeth M. asks, are we going to be poll watchers? Or how do we counter the GOP army of poll watchers, quote unquote? I think for any
question for me?
Oh, it could be a question. So anybody wants to jump in.
On the poll watcher question, I think that's a really good question. I think, you can definitely volunteer, sign up to do that work. I think for us, we're really going to be pointing people to the experts in terms of voter protection. So including that information in our GOTV messaging, so voters know how to get in touch if they're, if there are any irregularities at the polls on election day or leading up as people are working to cast their ballots by mail.
Mm-hmm. So we've got another question, and so this is a question that I asked earlier, but just to reiterate, Victoria V asks, how is Windivisible avoiding overlapping voter contacts? Don't contact the same voters over and over again. And Victoria, we hear you. As we were saying earlier, there's nothing more annoying than getting 13 texts from the same effort asking you, are you registered to vote? Have you voted yet? And having to say yes, 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 yes again and again, or remove me from your list. So as Lucy said earlier, we don't coordinate directly with the campaigns, but we do coordinate with many, many efforts that are doing Get Out the Vote all over the country. And because of that coordination, while we're not able to eliminate all duplication, we are able to eliminate quite a bit of it to prevent that kind of overlap. So you can have a little bit more certainty that when you're volunteering with Windivisible, you know that you aren't going to just be sending texts, making calls, sending postcards to the same darn voters that everybody else is sending them to. We're trying to maximize our input. We're not just trying to talk to voters. We're trying to talk to the right voters in order to get them out and not just waste effort, time, energy on talking to the same folks that everybody else is talking to.
Great. All right. And now let's see. We've got a lot of questions about voter suppression, which we talked about earlier. Emily W. asks, what are the 18 states that are our target states? Lucy, I don't know if you're able to remember 18 states all in a row. I would be super impressed if you're able to just rattle them off. Personally, I don't know if I can, but
happily, I have a cheat sheet map that I keep up on my computer at all times. So yeah, I'm happy to talk those through. So it's a pretty broad map. Most of the states that we're looking at do have Senate elections because we know how important it is to send Mitch McConnell back to Kentucky. So the vast majority of states that we're looking at will have Senate elections. So those are places like Arizona, Colorado, Texas, Georgia, North Carolina, Iowa, Maine. Also some Senate races that folks may not have been paying as much attention to, some of those ones that are reaches, but where we think, Democrats do have a decent shot, places like Alaska, South Carolina, Kansas, Montana. We've got a couple democratically held seats that we know we need to keep in Democratic hands in the Senate. So Doug Jones in Alabama, we've got Gary Peters in Michigan, and Tina Smith in Minnesota. And then we've also got a couple of states where there aren't Senate elections this cycle, but we just know how crucially important they are for the presidency. So places like Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and Florida as well. So it's a broad map. It includes states in every part of the country. And we're really excited to support folks in talking to voters across the country, in places that sometimes people don't think of as competitive, but we really believe can be this cycle.
That's great. A follow-up question on that. Is the Indivisible Payback Project, Jared asks, is the Indivisible Payback Project integrated with Windivisible? Lucy, can you take that one?
Yeah, absolutely. So for those of you who don't know, Payback Project is our project targeting incumbent Republican senators who we have just so much to pay back for, from their votes to quit Donald Trump on impeachment, all the way through to the terrible response that we've seen on COVID, to terrible immigration policies. So, there is a lot we have to pay them back for. And we are looking to target 11 incumbent Republican senators across 10 states. And all 10 of those Payback Project states are part of Windivisible. And we will be doing outreach to voters in all 10 of those states, targeting all 11 of those incumbent Republican senators.
We got one question from Rebecca. I had this question the very first time that I phone banked or text banked, which was, how can I phone bank or text from home without exposing my own phone number?
Yeah, so we have software that we use. I don't even know if that's the right word. Programs that we use that are run through Indivisible, that our data team works on, making sure that we have all the voter contact information in those programs. And then our training team will talk you through how you actually go about getting involved in those programs. But you don't have to use your own phone number. It'll run through, if you're making phone calls, it'll be a predictive dialer that will help find people who are answering the phones. If you're sending text messages, it'll run through a program called Text Out. So yeah, that's a great question. And we have a team ready to support both on the data end and the training end to make sure that you can get up and running.
Us accidentally giving your phone number to a zillion people who will then all call you up and say, why did you call me? It is set up to avoid that outcome. If you used a phone bank in the earlier days using your own phone, that was not always how it worked. All right, one more question. I think we've got time for one more question. So Lucy, this is another question for all of us really. How is Indivisible working on making voting safe and absentee ballots? Ezra, do you want to take that one?
Sure. Yeah. So I think the number one thing we need to keep in mind is that Donald Trump's sole motivation for as long as I've known about Donald Trump is self-enrichment and self-preservation. We think that will continue to be his sole motivation up until November 3rd, and however much longer he is around, he will be driven by that one motivation, which means he is focused on undermining the vote. He is focused on preventing you from voting from home, voting by mail. He is working with Senate Republicans to ensure that the elections are not secure, that are able to be interfered with by foreign actors. And folks, we can't control who Donald Trump is. We can't control who Mitch McConnell is. They are going to do what they've been doing now for years. What we have control over is what we do over the course of the next 99 days. We can fight in the COVID legislation that is moving through Congress right now for election security, for vote by mail, for fully funding the United States Postal Service. And we can use every single week between now and Election Day, driving up the turnout so high that regardless of what shenanigans they pull, they will not be able to steal it. Now, remember, Donald Trump was president in 2018. Mitch McConnell was Senate Majority Leader in 2018. Even worse, we had a House Speaker who was a Republican. They all didn't want to see the elections turn out the way they did in 2018. And yet you all helped build a wave that was so massive that it overcame all the barriers that they tried to put up between the electorate and fair elections. So we've done it once, we have to do it again. Part of the solution of ensuring that these election results are respected is by ensuring that we drive turnout as much as possible. So my recommendation is focus on the things that are in your control and accept the things that are outside your control. There is enough in our control that we can flip the Senate, we can take the presidency, and we can pass democracy-saving reforms next year.
Thanks, Ezra. That's a great question to end this segment on. And then I'm going to pass it over to Megan, who is going to recap for us the ways you can take action and finish off this conversation tonight and help us all kick off our general election program. So Megan, over to you.
Yay! Thank you, Leah and Ezra, and thank you to Lucy. I think we got a ton of really good information about how we're going to make Windivisible happen. It's happening. It's going down. So at the beginning of the stream, I said we were going to talk to a wonderful group leader from North Central Florida, Jyoti Parmar. Unfortunately, we're having some technical difficulties. I, of course, blame Ron DeSantis for this. So unfortunately, we will not be able to talk to her tonight. But like I said, Florida is crushing it. You have some competition. If you're living anywhere other than Florida, you've got some stiff competition. You better step it up because Florida has already sent 70,000 text messages because they are ready to Windivisible in November. So you've already gotten some excellent advice about what you can do to make this happen. You can go, of course, to 2020.indivisible.org, and that's like a one-stop shop for like everything you can do, all the different volunteer opportunities there are out there for you to do over the next 100 days or so. If you're like me, you get a little bashful on the phone, you're a texter, you can sign up for some text shifts. It's very satisfying. You can do it from the comfort of your home while watching old episodes of Survivor, and you get the benefit of saving our democracy while you do it. So go to 2020.indivisible.org. Of course, you can text live stream to 97779, and then you'll get notifications. Every time we do something like this, you'll get a notification, and you can join us for another wonderful conversation about how we're going to beat Donald Trump at long last this November. So here's what you got to do. We got to defeat Donald Trump. That's step one. Indivisible has endorsed Joe Biden. We're in it to win it. This year, we're going to kick Trump out of office, and you're going to help by going to 2020.indivisible.org. I don't know if you've heard that website, but make sure you check it out. This is the most corrupt presidency in the history of this country, which is saying something, and enough truly is enough. We got to flip the Senate too, of course, because even if we get a Joe Biden presidency, Mitch McConnell is just going to obstruct everything unless we flip the Senate also. So that's critically important. And we have to hold the House, because the House has been such an important, backstop in our democracy's slide over the last 3.5 years. So we want to make sure we hold the House too, so some oversight can continue in the House. So here's how you get involved. You can call people on the phone, and as Lucy explained, no one will ever find out your phone number. You are safe, it's private. You can do phone banking. It's the fastest and easiest way to make an impact in November. Phone banking is one of the most effective digital tools available to boost voter turnout. And the program that we use will allow you to speak to voters in real time and talk to them about how important this election is and how important it is that they're registered to vote, that they know where to go vote, and that they do, in fact, cast a vote this November. Because as Ezra mentioned, it really needs to be a tsunami of votes, because Trump is playing really cute about whether or not he's going to accept the results. So calling people, A+ way to do it. Like I said, if you're not a phone person, there's of course texting. It's a super effective way to have quality conversations with people over text. If you have prior experience using those types of tools, you can give it a try. I have done it. It's very easy. It's a lot of fun. I did it on Election Day in 2018, and people were sending me photos over the texting app of them casting their ballot and getting their I voted sticker. It was like one of the most wonderful experiences I've ever had. So highly recommend. And you can also write letters to voters. You can, we're partnering with Vote Forward this election cycle. They provide activists with names, addresses, and data-driven proven templates to write letters to voters in important states, critical key battleground states where we need to win big. So letter writers, you can save your letters right up until the election, so voters receive them at the most strategic moment. Of course, people are going to be voting at all sorts of times this year, depending on which states expand vote by mail and stuff like that, but you can still have a huge impact depending on how you want to get involved. So go to 2020.indivisible.org, find out how you can help us Windivisible big time this November. This is a critical, as I've said, I can't say it enough times, critical 100 days. Our democracy is on the line. We cannot survive another year, let alone 4, of Donald Trump. So make sure you're registered. Make sure everybody knows registered. Make sure you're signing up to help. Join me at 2020.indivisible.org. So thank you to everyone for tuning in. Thank you to Leah and Ezra. Thank you to Lucy Solomon. And thank you to GOT Parmar. I'm sorry we couldn't talk to you tonight. Thanks for everything that you guys are doing. Thanks to everybody out there who is already signing up for shifts. I know you're already going to the website as we speak. So thanks so much. Thanks for staying in this fight with me. 100 days to go. We got this. Thank you.
For 4 years, you marched, you made calls, you helped save the Affordable Care Act and flip the House. Indivisibles have helped save us from the worst of the Trump presidency. And now, it's time to kick him out. And that's why we're launching Windivisible. This is the most important election of our lifetime, and we need all hands on deck. For the next 100 days, We're counting on you to host virtual events, organize phone banking and text banking, and mobilize your community into action. This is not the world we expected for our general election campaign. The pandemic has forced us to adapt to this moment in ways that we never could have anticipated. But the stakes are too high to back down, and we're ready to meet this moment. We have the tools to succeed. We have the resources to succeed. And most importantly, we have you. And we know you're going to show up, do the work, and help us win in November. Visit 2020.indivisible.org to learn more.
We have to be vigilant about the violence that's being done by this incumbent president to our economy and to the pursuit of justice. We can be forgiven for believing the president is more interested in power than in principle, more interested in serving the passions of his base than the needs of the people in his care. For that's what the presidency is, the duty to care for all of us, not just those who vote for us, but all of us. They're all called to love one another as we love ourselves. It's really hard work, but it's the work of America. Donald Trump is interested in doing that work. Donald Trump has turned this country into a battlefield riven by old resentments and fresh fears. He thinks division helps him. Fear, anger, finger pointing.
Just to show you how bad the fake news is.
Is this who we are? Is this who we want to be? Is this who we want to pass on to our children and our grandchildren? Or do we want to be the America we know we can be? Look, I look at the presidency as a very big job, and nobody will get it right every time. And I won't either. But I promise you this, I won't traffic in fear and division. I won't fan the flames of hate. I'll seek to heal the racial wounds that have long plagued our country, not use them for political gain. I will never forget, I promise you, this job is not about me. It's about you. It's about us. This is the United States of America. There's never been anything we've been unable to do when we set our mind to do it and we've done it together.